Bring out the tissue now, you guys. If you haven't already, you're going to have to get some new tissue. This young lady, her name is Roxanne Rodrigo, and she was introduced by one of our servants here. And this woman also is absolutely amazing. So get your tissue ready, get your hands together. Roxanne Rodrigo, Restoration. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you for you guys, all you ladies being here and everyone who's watching live. I also want to say thank you to Lisa, the praise and worship team, anyone on leadership who helped put this event together. I know how hard it is. I'm on our women's ministry at my Calvary Chapel, Golden Springs, and I know when we have events, I see behind the scenes and how hard it is to put this together. So I just want to say thank you, and ladies who are here attending, thanks again for being here. Before I get started and I share my testimony, I want to read this. There's a pivotal part of my story that's very deep to me, and there's a song that relates to that part of my story that I'm going to read to you. It's a song, you've probably heard it. It's Lauren Daigle. It's How Can It Be? So I'm going to read the song. It's real quick. I am guilty, ashamed of what I've done, what I've become. These hands are dirty. I dare not lift them up to the Holy One. You plead my cause. You right my wrongs. You break my chains. You overcome. You gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. How can it be? I've been hiding, afraid I've let you down. Inside I doubt that you still love me. Inside I doubt that you still love me. But in your eyes, there's only grace now. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome. You gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. How can it be? Though I fall, you can make me new. From this death, I will rise with you. Oh, the grace reaching out for me. Yea, how can it be? That song, I know we have many songs in ministry that hit part of our lives and what we've been through, but that song just, as you hear my story, you'll hear just the shame and the guilt that I carried for so many years. And even in the moment that it all happened, it was hard. And we all have a story to share. I know that all of us ladies, everyone has something that they've gone through, walking through darkness. But it's beautiful to see the end result, right? The restoration, and that's why my title, Restoration, is because there's only one person that can restore and heal and give back, and that is Jesus Christ. So here I go, I'm gonna get started. And this is my first time speaking in front of a large crowd, so bear with me if I get a little nervous. Thank you. So let me start off with my childhood. So I grew up, I guess, what you would call an American family. I had my mom, my father. I was the oldest of 4 of my siblings. I had 2 brothers and a sister. I'd say I had a great childhood. My father worked. My mom stayed at home to take care of us, make sure we had dinner. We had birthday parties, holiday celebrations. We went on family vacations. My dad worked really hard to provide for us, and he did. Fast forward to high school, I think that's when a lot of the troubled, problems occurred in my life. I think in my early teen, as most teens, they're trying to discover and find out who they are and why they're here and what's their purpose. And I was one of those teenagers. My family, unfortunately, they wanted me to go to an all-girl high school because they knew I was maybe a little wild, a little wild side. So they thought maybe this might tame me. But so I went to an all-girl high school, and being there, I met, I had a group of friends. But I always knew that somewhere inside, deep down inside, I had low self-esteem, and I lacked confidence, and I didn't know my purpose. And of course I know now because I didn't have God, but at that time I didn't know. And just, I mean, we had the family and we had everything going for us, but there was something missing. So let me fast forward. So during high school, my high school years, I started to dabble into experimenting with drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, different types of drugs. And my girls, nothing too crazy. We weren't addicted, or I wasn't addicted, but it was just we were dabbling into it. And then going into my senior year, I was about to graduate, and I had a boyfriend, and I ended up getting pregnant. So while I was pregnant at my senior year, here I felt that I'm still trying to discover who I am, what am I supposed to be, and then now I'm pregnant, but I thought my mom had me at 18 and she was married and I can do this, right? So I told my boyfriend we were going to have this child, and he said, yeah, you're going to move in with me. We're going to try to make it work. And we moved in together. I lived with him in his parents' house, and things were going. I was pregnant, enjoying my pregnancy, young mom. And then things started happening in our relationship. There was deception. There was unfaithfulness. All these things, and I'm just like trying to put this facade that, oh, everything's going to be okay. We're going to stay together. I can, overcome this. And sure enough, he ended up getting another girl pregnant while I had just had his child. And so here I thought, okay, the facade that everything's together. I'm like, okay, it's not happening. But I talked to him. I asked him, like, what does he want? And he said he wanted to stay with me, that he was sorry if I can forgive him. And of course, I'm going to forgive him because I have this facade that everything's okay and everything's going to be fine. So we stayed together, even though I know in my heart it hurt me so much that he had another child. And I was devastated. I was broken. And I wanted to, what I remembered in high school, mess around with drugs to kind of maybe take away some of the pain that I was feeling. So I started going back to some of the people I knew where I can get some drugs from, and I noticed that as I was getting high, it took away some of the pain. It took away the feeling that my life was not where it should be, and it numbed what I was feeling inside. And here I am, my daughter's father and I were trying to make our relationship work. I was dabbling with drugs again. But again, it wasn't too crazy. And then we would fight, and I'd go back to my parents, and just all this drama, right, back and forth. Then finally I said to myself, what am I going to do to really make it work? I mean, he has another child. I have to do something. So I told my daughter's father, I said, hey, why don't we get our own place? Like maybe stability. I know I was hoping we would get married one day, but I was like, maybe some type of stability. We have our own home and we can start our family life and the American family, right? And maybe get married one day. And he said, sure, let's do it. So we went to my parents. They helped us out. We bought a condo and we started living together. And then all of a sudden he started doing his, he was very fit in high school. And when I met him, he was very fit. And so he was so into the gym, and then he got into bodybuilding. So he competed in competitions, and he was into himself, and I never went to any of his competitions. Now, I wonder why, but it'll unfold soon. And while we lived in our new place and we were excited, he was also competing in that time period that we were moving into our home, but I was distracted from the new home and the furniture and just, having our own place, right? I'm 19, 20 years old. All right, so then sure enough, they started happening where he wouldn't come home, and I'm already thinking, is this happening again? And sure enough, I approached him, and it was very heartbreaking. And again, here I'm feeling uncertain about my life and who I am and am I doing the right thing? And my life is in shambles. And then I portrayed to my family and my friends that we're okay, and we have our own home, and things are going to get better. But in reality, I was hurting inside, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it at the time. And so all I could do was think about what can I do to take this pain away. So again, I started, more dabbling into drugs, and I met this guy who showed me how to smoke dope. So I met this guy and I started smoking it, and that's where the addiction came, because smoking this dope really felt good. It felt that it just took away everything and that everything would be okay. In fact, smoking dope actually helped me lose weight and, helped me maintain my figure. It was a lot of things, but it's a lie from the enemy. And but I did it. And my daughter's father, the time now, he finds out that I'm talking to this other gentleman, and now he's upset, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, right? How the tables turned. But our relationship was very dysfunctional. Let's be honest. It was very dysfunctional. We were fighting all the time, and I stopped talking to that guy, but yet my addiction was still there. I had other means and other ways to get it, and my daughter's father and I, like I said, our relationship was just so dysfunctional. And I said, what can I do to maintain this? What can I do to fix this? And of course, maybe giving up drugs may help, but at the time it helped kind of suppress how everything I was feeling. So I thought, well, maybe if I have another baby, right? I know that's the wrong thing to do, but again, this is where we're just young, naive, we're dumb, we're on drugs, and we don't know better, right? And so I ended up getting pregnant, and I told him that I was pregnant again, and it's really sad, but he was in denial. He said that, I don't know if that's my child. You had cheated on me before, and he blew up. And so this whole pregnancy, I stayed with him in our home, and he really just didn't give me any affection. So here I am alone, pregnant. My family, they're thinking he's crazy. He's like, how can he? It was just my life felt like a big lie. And here I am carrying this baby alone. My parents were there for me. I had a few friends that were there supportive of me, but my daughter's father he just want nothing to do with me, but we lived together. And then he started getting real moody, very moody. He had high mood swings. And then one day I went to our restroom, and I looked under the cabinet, and I found this needle. And I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, so I thought maybe he was doing drugs. So I'm like, oh my God, he's doing dope too. Like, what's going on? Turns out he was doing steroids. So it kind of goes with the competition. He's in, his roids kind of falls in that category. So then I understood why he would get upset and why he would rage. And so forth. So with that, one day he came home, and I forgot, I think he was accusing me of cheating again, and he was bringing back the past or whatever, and he was so raged that my daughter, I believe she was 3 years old, she saw how raged he was that he got on top of me. Oh, and I'm sorry, I lost track. Sorry, guys. I had my child. My son was already born. So I had my son. His name was Christian. And I'm going to back up. Sorry, guys. When I had my son, and I delivered him, he wasn't there. He was not there. My best friend was there, my mom was there, and my son was born, and it was beautiful. And here I have my son, but now that I had him, I was still feeling that same feeling I had where I was just lost and not sure what my life would be and where it would go. And then all of a sudden, my daughter's father, so that's back to the story, my daughter's father was accusing me of cheating again. And he just raged, and he got violent where he put his hands on me. He threw me on the floor. My daughter was witnessing this. The baby was asleep upstairs. But it was so bad where it was like he was choking me, and like he wanted to kill me. And my daughter, her being there, she said, like, Dad, leave my mom alone. And it was the worst I've ever seen. So with that, when I left, I was scared, and I took the kids with me, and I went to the payphone. We had payphones back then, and I called the police, and the police went to the house, and they arrested him. Now here I am with my 2 kids, and I had to call my parents, I had to call his parents, tell them that he was arrested for domestic violence. Mind you, in the back, I'm still getting high here and there. I'll get loaded whenever I can. Well, now he's in jail. His parents are very upset with me. My parents, I don't know what they felt, but it was just a lot of feelings of, again, as you can see, it's building up, like just where's my life going? This facade that everything's okay is not okay. And so then there was a night, my son was about 4 months old. I just felt so helpless. I felt, why am I living? Why am I here? And I just, again, wanted to suppress all these feelings with drugs. And my youngest had went with her grandparents for that night, so it was just me and my son. And I was craving to get high so bad. And so I decided that I was going to go that night and get high. I had my son. I said, I'm going to change him, clean him, feed him. He's going to fall asleep, and I'm going to go to this guy I knew who would sell drugs, and I'm going to pick some up. I'll probably pick up a sack, come home. Well, it was in July, so it was hot. It was a warm summer, like it is in July. And I went to this house, and I thought I was just going to smoke a bowl and then head back home. Well, it was about 4 in the morning, and once my son was asleep, I didn't want to get him out of the car. I left him in the car, and I said, I'm just going to go in there, smoke a bowl real quick, and everything will be okay. But before you know it, it was another bowl, and it was a continuum of just getting high, and before you know it, the time's ticking, right? And my son's in the car, no one knows but me. And that's the shame and the guilt that I carried for a long time. And there came a time where I said, I during that moment where I was just getting loaded, I have to say there was just some kind of demonic stuff going on. And when you're in that world, if you've experienced it, you guys know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm glad you haven't. But there was something in me saying, you got to go back. You got to go back. So I go back to my car, and by this time it's about 6:30 a.m. And I get in my car, and I'm so scared to look back. And I don't hear anything, so I'm thinking he's still asleep. And then I turn around, and he's dead. And in that moment, I grab my son, and I'm holding him. And I'm thinking, what has happened? Like, what am I doing? What's going on with me? Just everything, all distraught. It was just so crazy. And all I could think about was, God, bring him back. God, bring him back to me, please. That thing, quiet. So then I said, I got to go to church. So I drove to this church. I put my son back in his car seat. I go to church. And I remember praying, and I didn't hear anything. I was expecting God's voice, an audible voice, to come out of the clouds and say, okay, everything's okay, but nothing. It was just silence. And I called my father, and I said, I need to let you know. My dad answered. I said, Dad, something's happened, something's wrong. And it was almost like my father knew, without me having to say it, but I said, something happened and I need you. And I gave him the location of where I was at, and I told him it wasn't good. And I was just crying, and I don't even know if he understood me, but he came immediately, and as I knew he was there, like 6 cops came as well. And it just happened so fast. The cops get there, they open the car, they see my son, my dad's crying, they're questioning my dad, and everything just happened so fast. Remember, I haven't slept. I've been on under the influence, and I remember the police telling me, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. They arrest me. I go in the car, and I just remember sitting in the back seat of my car and just feeling so helpless and saying, my life is over. I've done the worst of the worst. I'm marked, right? How can I ever live again? I took the life of my son. And I remember driving off in the police car and seeing my dad broken. My dad. And driving to the police station, I was being, some police were being a little judgmental, and then some weren't. But it was hard. They were being kind of rude to me. Let's put it that way. And it broke me. Again, my life. I mean, look where my life's at now, right? It's falling apart. I'm feeling helpless. So suicide is coming into my mind. Why live, right? For what? So, but I didn't tell that to the police. But they take me to Twin Towers, and I'm starting to go through the cell process, checking in, and I'm looking around at the place, and I'm thinking, how am I going to kill myself? How am I going to do this? And I'm not sure if I really wanted to do it, but it was a thought. And they had someone come see me and talk to me to check on my well-being, how I was doing, and I was honest, and I told them I felt suicidal. And as soon as you say that, they're going to put you in like a 5150. And so then now I couldn't see my family for a while, but they put me there. Eventually, let me fast forward. So now I get out of the 5150. I tell them that I'm going to be okay. Just, I'm not sure what's happening. My father contacts me. He says, don't worry, we're going to get you a lawyer. Your family, we're here to support you. But I honestly didn't believe it. I thought the world hated me just from how I was being treated by some of the police. I said, my dad's lying. He just wants to comfort me. He loves me. My dad just wants the best for me. So about a week in, 2 weeks in, going into being in jail, we had to go to court to fight for our court custody for my other daughter, Celeste. And the humility of being in this position, I had to be shackled, ankles shackled, shackles around my waist and my wrist. And the reason why they kept me that way is because I was a high-profile case, because it was all over the news. And so they kept me away, so I was a keep away. And they would keep me like this, and every time they would put me in a cell, I was by myself. And I remember having to go to children's court one morning, and I was put in this cell. It was a cold, cemented cell, which I felt I deserved because of what happened. But I was sitting there broken, and I was crying on the cold floor. I remember the floor being so cold, and I just cried up to God, and I said, I haven't heard from you. Is there anybody there? What's going to happen? And nothing. But I cried. And then the next thing I know, the officer opens the door. Rodrigo, get up. We got to go to court. So I get up, and I'm feeling miserable. And I'm walking to the bus, and the officer's standing there by the door. He tells me, Jesus loves you. The way he said it, it was God. Because the moment he said it, I looked at him, and it was like it was only him and I. And it was like a light just hit him, and I felt this comfort. And it was simple, ladies. He just said, Jesus loves you. And I'll never forget that moment. And then we get in the bus, and he puts me in a cage. Again, I'm in another cage. And the ladies, they keep me away from the other ladies. They start from the general population, because I have to be kept away, like I said. Well, they start boarding the bus, and they pass by my cage, and they say, why is she in that cage? And I can hear them, mumbling under their breath. She's the one that did this and that. And then I can hear them wait till she goes up to prison, and just all these different stories. And the officer, he got up, and he banged on the fence, and everybody got quiet, and he said, hush, all of you have done something to get on this bus. No one should pass judgment. And I looked at him like, who is this man? Who is this man? And I never saw him again, but I'll never forget that moment. And throughout my journey in the court, in jail, fighting my case, I was introduced to different chaplains. People were praying for me. The lawyer was out there with my family. They were writing character letters about who I am to help me feel better about myself, but they were beautiful, inspirational letters about who they saw me as a person, and that this was an accident, this wasn't intentional, just all these different things. And my journey started, and I can see now as I look back, God was bringing these people in my path to comfort me, to console me, to let me know that He's with me. And even now, when I think about that moment that I was in that car and I turned around and I saw my son dead and there was silence, He was with me. He was with me all along. He was just waiting. And throughout the journey of fighting my case, there's so much. I'm going to kind of just give pieces of it. But I remember this chaplain came by and gave me this book. It was my first book I read of Greg Laurie. And it was Greg Laurie's story of how he lost his son, and how him and his wife, and how they had to go through this, trauma of losing their son. And it really inspired me. And then just different books and people coming into my life, like I said, and people were praying for me. I did serve fighting my case. I felt this peace. And again, it's that peace that surpasses all understanding, right? And we know it's from God. And so now the time comes, it's about a year, and I get sentenced, and with the lawyer and the help of my family, and of course, God Almighty, right? I was sentenced 10 years, and I took the deal. They offered me a deal, and so I had to go up to state. So I'm going to fast forward. Now I'm in state prison. I'm up north, Valley State Prison for women. And here I'm serving my time. And I have to tell you, ladies, throughout my journey there in prison, God had his hand over me. Different women that I met there, and so many broken women, but the women that I felt that the Lord was able to let me share my story, they were there. In fact, I had some women protect me from any harm, but I know that was God. God orchestrated that. I was protected. I was taken care of. So here I am in prison now. I'm serving my time. My family will come visit me once every 2 weeks. I'm going to church. They have a Celebrate Recovery at this prison. The warden allowed it. So I started doing Celebrate Recovery. I became a leader. I got baptized. I got saved. I was raised Catholic, by the way. And so when I was like, get saved, and they're going to baptize you in this bathtub, the chaplain there had a bathtub of water. I did it all, and I just think that I served my time until I was able to be released. And one thing I'm just going to share a little piece with you before I go on to the next. There was a visit that I had with my daughter, and this has to do with restoration, that my daughter had told me during my visit. She said, Mom, my dad and his family, they tell me that when you get out that it's never going to be the same, and that your life's never going to be the same, and I'm never going to live with you again. And that hurt. And I felt that I deserved it. I said, well, maybe that's true. And I didn't tell her that, but I thought about it. And I said, that's not true, honey. Well, we'll see what happens when I get out. So now I'm going to fast forward to now. It's my release date, and I'm out. Oh, hold on. See, let me back up. Sorry, I forgot. There's this other part of the story. So while I'm in the prison serving my time, and I'm doing the main yard and experimenting with all the different Bible studies they have, there's this part. My parents had sent me this CD Walkman, and I would hit the track all the time, right? And I put this radio on, and I changed the radio, and I hear this man come on the radio. And it's Raw Reese, Calvary Chapel, Diamond Bar. And I didn't know who he was at the time, and I'm like listening to his sermon, and I'm walking the track, and I'm like, Diamond Bar? Like, my parents live in Phillips Ranch. When I get out, I'm going to go to this church. I found my church. And sure enough, so now I'm out. I'm getting released, and guess what? I'm excited. I'm paroling 2007, and I'm going to go to Calvary Chapel, and I go. And nobody went with me. I went by myself, and I walk into this church, and I'm here, and I'm hearing the Word of God, and my life's going to change, and it's going to be different. And my family's forgiven me. I'm getting a second chance. My daughter, she comes to visit me. Just things are looking good, and before you know it, 10 months in, I kind of went back into the world again. Sucks, huh? But it wasn't like before. It was just more of going out and hanging out in the party scene. I worked, though. Don't get me wrong. I worked. And work came first because I remember I was fighting for my daughter back. But sure enough, I did. I went back into the scene of just being in the world. But I still felt this tug. Every time I'd be out or have a boyfriend, there would be this tug. So then I'm fast forward. So now I'm out in the world. Now it's been about 4 or 5 years, and I have this boyfriend. And I'm with this guy, and I tell him, one day we were just hanging out, we were drinking, and I said, I need to go back to church. And he's like, you keep saying that. What is it? And I said, I don't know. It's like, I need to go back. And really, ladies, that calling, that yearning of going back is the Holy Spirit, because God says when you're His, you're always His, no matter what. And He calls you back. And it just kept saying, come back to church. And so I told him, and he said, my boyfriend at the time, he said, I'll go with you. And I was like, you will? He's like, yeah, let's go. And I go, it's going to be Calvary Chapel, Golden Springs. I'm like, I haven't been there in a while, but that's where we're going. And he's like, let's go. So here we go. We go on a Sunday, and and we're hearing the service, and they do the altar call, and of course I didn't want to go up, but I stood up at my seat and I accepted the Lord back into my life. And then now I'm excited, and I'm telling my boyfriend we can't drink anymore. I'm like, everything's got to stop, and like everything, it was just different this time. And he was looking at me, he's like, wow. He's like, okay, I support that. I'm like, I'm done. No more drinking, nothing. I don't want anything, no relationship unless it's a godly man. I couldn't. So then they were going to do this. There was another service we went to, and they did an altar call, and they had called all the pastors to come up. And I remember sitting down and watching the pastors, and I'd see people, and I'm praising God, and all these people getting saved. And then as I see these pastors come up, I see this one man. And I look at that man. He's a pastor. And I tell my boyfriend, I said, I think I know that man. And he says, what do you mean, from here, from church, we've been coming? I said, no, I know him from somewhere. He looks so familiar. And then we're driving home, and it clicked. And then I said, that's the officer that told me Jesus loved me. And he said, are you sure? And I said, I think so. I got to ask him the next time I see him, if I see him again. So they're having this... The church was having a show of my favorite movie, The War Room, with Priscilla Schreier. And if you don't have a war room, you need to have one, ladies, because I fight my battles there, and we always win. So we go watch this movie, and I see the gentleman again in the hallway, and he's there, and I'm getting nervous, and my boyfriend's with me, and I'm like, there he is. I go, I'm going to ask him. He's like, go ahead and go ask him. And so I do. I walk up to him, and I'm like, excuse me, sir. And he's with this smile. He's like, yes. And I'm like, I have a question to ask you. I'm like, did you ever work in law enforcement? And he said, yes, I did. And I said, were you a bus driver? And he said, yes, I was. And in that moment, I broke. And I started to cry. And he looked at me. He's like, what's wrong? And I said, you have no idea that you were the vessel that the Lord used to console me, to comfort me, to love me. I go, you said the simplest words, Jesus loves me. I said, and not only that, I go to serve my time, and I hear Maurice on the radio, on the Walkman. And I come to this church. God's calling me. The Spirit is telling me to come to this church. And here I see you. I mean, ladies, that's not coincidence. That's God. God was with me all along. And I tell this man's name is Didel Castro. It's for those of you who know him or may not know him. But he was a pastor at this church, but he has moved with his wife, Maria, and their daughter, Natalie. But he became, at the time, he was I looked up to him as a spiritual father. And every time I go to church, he'd see me, he'd smile and give me a hug. How are you doing? Continued my walk. He actually even told me, going a year into my walk there, being back, he said, why don't you attend, he would say, Mija, call me Mija, why don't you attend the Bible study, Bible college here? And I was like, you think so? He's like, I see your thirst for the Lord. He's like, do Bible college. And he goes, you do have to pass the background check. And I go, oh, I do? And he goes, but guess who does the background checks? And I was like, oh, okay, So he told me to fill it out, and so I filled it out, and before you know it, I'm at Bible college. I'm meeting different women and men who love the Lord, and Pastor Hector Martinez, he's also, he's a missions pastor. God opened the door for me to go on a missions trip with them. I've just met so many great people. I got involved in women's ministry. Actually, some of the ladies from my women's ministry are here supporting me. I'm a hostess for our women's ministry, and I love serving. I love being a servant. I know that this time it's different, me being back, and the Lord has restored. So again, like my title, my message, restoration, has restored everything that the enemy has taken. So I know I skipped a part, but I did have another child, and her name is Aria. She's 6. So my youngest at the time, she was, I have a 23-year-old and I have a 6-year-old. And we lived together. My 23-year-old, I did get her back within maybe 3 years after. So she's been with me all this time. She currently lives with me. She attends Cal Poly. She's getting her degree. She loves me dearly. I love her. I know she's watching. I love you, Celeste. And the Lord has restored. He restores and he opens doors. And people would say, I remember too, remember this, oh, now you're a felon, you have a background. It's going to be hard. Not with God. Anything's possible with God. He opened doors for me that no man can open or shut. I mean, the position in my job. He's blessed me with my finances, my family, my children, and I'm in awe. And like Shannon and Bree and all of them have said, all the speakers today, it's not over. My journey is not over, and this is just like, I don't know if it's the middle, if I'm close to the end, only God knows, but I know there's more to come. And I'm so grateful to be in this relationship with God and share his love with others. And I don't know where this next part of my life is going or the next part of my journey. I have no idea, but I know it's great. And I know it's all for the glory of God. And again, ladies, I just have to remind you that if you are hurting and you are broken, you heard my story, and that I was broken and I was hurting, and I thought that there was no reason for me to live, but there is. And God reveals that to you. And he reveals it to each one of us in a different way. And if you call on his name, like I did, he will reveal himself to you. He will show you his way. He will provide for you. And one of the things that I've learned as I've been in my women's studies is living on God's promises. And I live on them daily. I have them all over my wall in my house. Like, people come over, my family, they're like, oh, she has scriptures all over the wall. I'm like, hello. Like, I wake up and if a battle starts coming on, I just read these scriptures and I'm like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I'm telling you, I have a war room. So if you haven't seen the movie, please go see it, Priscilla Schreier. But yeah, and just as I end my story, I just want you ladies to know that there is hope and that there's nothing that God can't do, because he loves you so much. And when Lisa was preparing me for this, she asked me, she's like, what has Jesus done for you? And I sat there and I just listed all these things. I'm like, he's my provider, he's my father, he's my lover, he's my comforter, he's my healer. He does everything for me. And I know for some people it may sound foreign who don't have that relationship with God, and I hope you do find that relationship with him, but he reveals it to you in his time, in his way. And then you'll get it. And I'm so in love with him that I don't ever want to go back. So like I said, me coming back to church this time, I'm here to stay. Nothing's taking me back. And then I'm just waiting for God to bless me with my husband, and he's got to be a godly man. As Rory says, he has to love God more than he loves me first, right? So I'm just waiting patiently. But anyway, well, thank you, ladies. That was my story. And thank you for having me. Okay.